Before we kick off this show, here's a reminder that our All 32 Picks and IPA show has its own podcast feed now. So if you're used to seeing it in your Seahawkers podcast feed, don't look there anymore. Go find All 32 Picks and IPAs wherever you listen to your podcast.
Definitely check it out, folks. It's a lot of fun. On that podcast, we drink and we swear, which is really fun. And we make awesome picks, or at least I do. I don't know about Jared and Brandon, but if you want to hear a little more about the league, we try to break down every game as best we can. I think it's a lot of fun. Check it out and hit subscribe.
Visit picksandipas.com. That's picksandipas.com. And you can find all the options there on how to subscribe.
Welcome to the Seahawkers podcast with your hosts, Adam Emmert.
I'd love to draft a tackle and not worry about where I'm going to move him to because he's going to succeed a freaking tackle.
And Brandon Schultz.
Is Steve Keim the Brian Williams of general managers? I say yes. And for that, do better.
Go Hawks!
On a quest to own the West, yippee-ki-yay, we make the ground shake. On game day, 12 man, yay, feeling it is vital. The Seahawks coming to take.
This is the Seahawkers podcast. I'm Brandon Schultz, member of the Military Seahawkers, and joining me, my good buddy, Montana Seahawker Adam Emmert.
You are awfully chipper coming off a loss, Brandon. And I you know what? I appreciate your attitude this
I'm
week.
looking forward to this week. And part of my attitude, too, is, yes, if we were to do the show Sunday night, I was not feeling the same way. I wasn't even feeling the same way on Tuesday. Yeah, and Tuesday has traditionally been our normal recording day. We put it off to Wednesday now. Now it's midweek. Now we're looking forward toward that upcoming game against the Niners. And that's what has me feeling better. Plus, we've had a whole lot of Marshawn Lynch on TV. And how can you not watch Marshawn Lynch on TV and feel a little bit better?
I loved having Marshawn Lynch, obviously, on the team, but I'm enjoying him in retirement as much as he seems to be enjoying retirement. It's awesome to see. It's great to see him come out of his shell because he's exactly the dude that we all kind of hoped he really was under there. From hearing all the stories from the other players, right? But he didn't show it often. But now he does, and it's great.
And you would see it because you would see him in like the infomercial for Skittles, and he did little things here. And when he was doing the gaming on Conan O'Brien, and he was on Conan O'Brien again this week. Marshawn Lynch is everywhere. Bear Grylls on Conan. He did some car show not too long ago, and he has a new enterprise, Adam. And when you think about the Beast Mode brand, what do you think Marshawn goes to next? You question maybe headphones? Like, is he going to be a music producer? No, chocolate. Chocolate is what Marshawn Lynch is doing next.
That's true. Although I have seen the headlines, right, that pop up that the call for Marshawn Lynch to come back to Seattle could be any day now. So maybe his next enterprise is playing for the Seattle Seahawks again, except for it won't be. Those are dumb headlines. But yeah, he's been all over the place. New enterprises, that's cool. But I think, Brandon, we can't talk about Marshawn Lynch right out of the gate. We got to talk about the game that just happened. Because you're right. Now that it's Wednesday, kind of feels like it's in the rearview mirror a little bit. But we need to break it down. I'm sure everybody has a lot of questions about what exactly happened against this team. But just God ram it. Like, it's just the same crap from them. There's a lot to cover for sure.
Yes, we'll get into that. We'll talk some Niners. We have Rich Madrid coming on the show. He writes for footballzebras.com as well as ninernoise.com. So we'll talk a little bit of 49ers with him. And of course, we got to do better and better at life. But yes, let's get into this show, Adam. And you mentioned it. The Rams. The Seahawks kick off their road schedule in Los Angeles, and you'd think by the way they played that it's like a throwback to the 10 a.m. Pacific starts. But now they're on the West Coast. They're starting on the normal time, but they get that East Coast time start as far as their performance goes. Now, I guess we can't blame the losses against the Rams on the start time anymore. That's unfortunate. Now, I guess we'll just have to blame it on the fact that the Rams have a good defense and Jeff Fisher. That's what he plays for. That is the Rams Super Bowl every year.
It seemingly is. And look, tell me the last time you remember a game with the Rams that wasn't ugly. I can't.
Yeah.
I can't since the Russell Wilson era started, since 2012.
Well, there was the one game where Russell had 300 yards passing, 100 yards rushing, and it all came down. And I think that was the Johnny Hecker fake throw that ended up getting the Rams a score late, and or at least keeping the ball out of the hands of the Seahawks late to where they couldn't score a field goal. But we didn't see that this game because 3 points, Adam. The Mariners played on Sunday, and they put up 6 on the scoreboard, twice as much as the Seahawks did.
That hurts, man. That hurts to know that right there. But everybody is wringing their hands over this offensive performance and freaking out. Look at all the headlines out there, right? Hey, Brandon, did you know something? I don't know if you heard about this, but the Seahawks have only scored 15 points in 2 games. For 2 weeks, it's been 15 points. How many points did they score? 15 points in 2 weeks. Have you heard about the 15 points in 2 weeks, Brandon, that the Seahawks have scored?
That adds up to 7.5 points on average. But, we could blame the offense in this game all we want, but we have something to blame. And we have someone taking the blame, Adam. And that's what I want to start off the show with, because Robert in Roseville, California, he's taken the hit this week for everybody.
He deserves it. He deserves it.
Here's his email. It says, please accept my apology for ruining this weekend's game. Game day. I started off in a 12 jersey, but an unfortunate lake trip had me changing to my last week's winning Lucky Hawk t-shirt. I take full responsibility for that change of clothing because it must have been the reason why we lost. The game wasn't on in my area, Niner NoCal. I went to the lake trying to fight off 100-degree weather, so I thought it would be okay to watch from my NFL phone app. My do better will be to find my local Hawks bar, enjoy the rest of the winning season, and not perform any unnecessary clothing changes. Apologies from Robert. And he says, P.S. Do I wash one or both unlucky items? And to me, Adam, I don't know if let me run this my theory by you.
Okay.
The jersey is what he started off with. Mm-hmm. That's what needs to be washed, because he went back mid-form to the lucky shirt, and I think there was just enough of that unluckiness from that jersey that you wash the jersey, you keep around the lucky piece of clothing that got the Dolphins win, and I think that'll make the difference.
Well, I think you're absolutely right, because if you put on the jersey that happens to be unlucky and needs to be washed, that unlucky it like sticks to your skin, like you can't get rid of it, and so then when you then put on the lucky shirt, it taints down the lucky shirt. So I don't know if you have to wash the lucky shirt too now.
I don't think so. I don't think we want to chance it because there was some luckiness there for that Dolphins game. And Robert, for being the one that came forward with the best response because this has become a good part of the show is fans taking the blame for these losses and their choices of
12 of them, yes.
Right. And so what Young Choi sent me a pack of Seahawks patches and swag. And so I know one way we're going to use this is for the best entry for the person who owns a loss the best. So Robert, send me your info. We got some patches coming your way.
Awesome. We need some stinking patches. And so does Robert. I like this. I like the idea of rewarding people who take it on the chin, like real men or real ladies. I like it. I like it a lot.
Well, let's get into.
I don't know that he can take all the blame, though, Brandon.
No, we'll pass around some of the blame to some other folks, too.
And I think let's start with the low hanging fruit, the obvious stuff that everybody's been talking about, and rightfully so. Let's talk about the offensive line, because honestly, we could sit and talk about the defense, which overall was good, but they have some accountability here as well. We'll get into that here in just a bit, but let's start with that offensive line. I don't know. I kind of went back and rewatched the game, watched specifically for the offensive line. I have some thoughts about it. What stuck out to you first, Brandon?
The thing that stuck out to me, Adam, is that Justin Britt is our very best offensive lineman. The guy who we've talked about the Britt progression. He's now your best offensive lineman at center. And while it's great to have a guy at center that you can count on, that's a guy that we've crushed in the last couple of years. He is your best offensive lineman. Think about that for a little bit.
Well, does that now validate the idea that given a couple of years with a guy, Tom Cable can actually turn a guy into a good offensive lineman? Is that what this validates?
I'm willing to accept that because we saw it with J.R. Sweezy, right? A guy that successfully made the switch from defensive line to offensive line, went to Tampa, got paid, and unfortunately injuries have kind of kept him out of the game. But maybe in the next year for Gilliam is his breakout year. I think we were kind of hoping it for this year to be that. He's another one of those Tom Cable project players. Maybe this just takes some time and we need to give it time.
Well, Pro Football Focus absolutely agrees with your assessment of Justin Britt. He is far and away, almost by a factor of 2 on their grading scale, better than everybody else on the offensive line. But the other guy you got to give a little credit to, I like how we're starting positive with this position group, but give Glowinski a little bit of credit. He has been really great in the run game. He's struggled in the pass game a little bit, which isn't completely surprising considering he's not the most fleet of foot fella. So I can understand how he would struggle there. Now, the other thing is that he's also been up against some pretty high caliber pass rushers to start out the season. And I mean, that at least we have 2 guys that we can look at and say they can play.
Well,
so, now that we've got that,
struggling is putting it nice for Mark Glowinski, because when you mentioned Pro Football Focus, I looked at their list of the worst performing players on offense this week. And the 2 people that jumped out are Mark Glowinski at left guard and right tackle Gary Gilliam. Those were your 2 worst of their position for the entire week in week 2. And those are 2 that we're saying are kind of the next best behind Britt.
There must be a horrible right guard somewhere in the league that can't play at all.
It's Chris Chester for the Falcons.
Okay, because the worst player on that offensive line this last game, I know a lot of people have been killing Bradley Sowell. It's Jamarcus Webb, dude. This guy, I got to say it. He sucks. He sucked with the Bears. He had one magical year with the Raiders, but otherwise had sucked there. Now he's sucking here. And the problem is we were touted this thing all through the preseason about the idea of having a Fetty at right guard and then Webb out at right tackle. And you got these 2 giant maulers that we'd be able to just mash the ball behind. But the problem is Webb is a dumpster fire when it comes to run blocking. He basically can't do it. He gets pushed all over the place. I can't understand it, given his size. I mean, he's not a weak guy, but he can't run block for the life of him. And this is kind of going to be my point about the offensive line in this show as we look back at this game. Everybody talking about how many times Russ got hit, which is true. He got banged around 9 times. He got hit in this game. But the biggest problem offensively is the fact that we couldn't run the ball with any consistency until late in the game. And then when we did, we went to another back that can't play, which we'll get to in a second as well. But the running of the ball is really where we need to take the step. That needs to be the first place that they actually come out and improve upon for us to have a workable offense. Because let's be honest, Russell Wilson can dictate how much he gets hit a little bit, and the fact that he can get the ball out of his hands quickly, he can move around a little bit. But as far as the running game goes, those guys have to perform a block here and there to get the guys going. I mean, Chris Michael even had some big runs when there was free blitzers and things like that as well. I mean, he was able to make guys miss and go, but you really need the offensive line to perform in the running game, and that's where the change needs to start. And that's where this offense will get better, because as much as everybody killed the offense in this game, there were some real bright spots. This offense isn't far away. I know everybody thinks it is. This offense is not far away from being one of those teams that's in the top 5 as far as scoring goes. I know that sounds nuts, but if you can just get a little production out of the run game, it opens up everything else. And you saw Russell dropping dimes to Tyler Lockett. You saw him throwing great balls over to Jimmy Graham throughout this game. I mean, we saw him kind of step up and be accounted for the first time and be healthy. I think the passing game will be just fine. We need to get going with the running game. And I think the way you do it is you get Webb out of the freaking lineup and you get Jermaine Ifedi back in there, who's that was your one thing that you did to really address the offensive line. And I think bringing him in will make a big difference. And also the return of Nick Vannett from injury, who I don't know if you heard, Brandon, but he was the best inline Y blocking tight end in the draft.
I still don't know what that means, but
all I know is he can block. And right. I remember early on during the Carroll era, them using Zach Miller as basically a de facto extra tackle. And the tackles are going to be our weakest link all year. But once we have Glowinski, Britt, and Affetti in the middle with Vanette helping on the tackle, it's going to make all the difference. I'm telling you, man, we're not that far away. Help is on the way. We have the guys to make it better. You'll hear the 49ers fellow Rich that we talked to in the interview say, I don't see a way that they get better. That's how they get better. They have the personnel to do it. We just need them to get healthy.
Yeah, I have a hard time buying that it hinges on one guy, but if Eddie does make that difference as far as the nastiness that we saw in the preseason up the middle, and that's where the Seahawks want to take advantage of running the football. You need to be able to run the ball up the middle for this offense to be effective, and you didn't see that, especially trying to get Rawls going. I mean, -7 yards on 7 attempts. That's a -1 yard every time, and part of that was due to the one play where he lost about 10 yards all at once. But you saw Kristen Michael, you saw him get average 6 yards per carry in this game. He was the hot hand, and they just never really seemed to get the run game going. And while we're talking about it, let's talk about Alex Collins, because Kristen Michael breaks off a big run. It looks like he has to come out of the game to catch his breath. They go to Alex Collins back to back, and he just runs into dudes and falls down with no gain twice in a row. And yes, I see you shaking your head, Adam. And I think that's every Seahawks fan out there was looking in that going, oh, this is what we're getting at with Alex Collins, huh?
I know what we would have gotten with Pope if he'd have been on the team.
Right.
We'd have gotten some positive yardage. Shifty, fast guy could have got around some of that nonsense. No, you know what Alex Collins looks like? You remember when Noshawn Moreno was early in his career? I jokingly called him No Hole Marino because he couldn't see the hole. He just run right into dudes. And that's exactly what Alex Collins does. He has zero vision. I mean, at least at this point in his career. God, it was so frustrating to see him in the game. Now, I get it with Rawls getting nicked up in the game. Who else are you going to go to? But the Hawks did start to get the running game going a little bit in the third quarter. They actually moved the ball fairly well in the fourth overall. Some penalties and a late turnover is really what made the whole thing come undone. Otherwise, they were driving for the win. And we have a whole different conversation if Kristen Michael can hold on to the ball.
Now, let me ask you something, because Kristen Michael holding on to the ball, when he fumbled it, I saw a lot of people react going, oh, of course, Kristen Michael fumbles it. I went back and looked. Do you know how many career fumbles Kristen Michael has? Before that fumble, how many? Just take a guess.
3 1/4.
1. He had 1 fumble for a guy that we crush for being prone to fumbling the football for his entire career within the regular season. Out of all his catches, out of all his carries, it's got to be up around 200 times that he's touched the football in his career. He has 1 fumble. So stop crushing Kristen Michael for being fumble prone. He's done it 1 time, now 2.
So we just have to forget some of his early preseason performances.
That's preseason. That's practically practice.
Practice. All right, man. Well, that's fine. I can get on board with that. And he has shown that throughout the end of last year and the beginning of this year that he really has taken to heart the idea of taking care of the ball. Yeah, he fumbled and it happened. But like you said, I think he's improved in that area. That happened to be a killer. Now, the other thing regarding the offense, and one of the reasons why it seemed like it struggled even more than it did, because we did move the ball throughout the game. I mean, Russell Wilson had well over 200 yards passing. We did amass at least a little bit of yardage on the ground in the second half. I mean, what was it, like 60 odd some yards on the ground? But the biggest problem with the offense is they'd be able to move the ball a little bit and get down the field. But the problem is that they never started past their own 25-yard line. Average starting field position in this game was at our own 17. That is terrible. And it's hard to manufacture 80+ yard drives, drive in and drive out. And that was one of the biggest problems, is that the defense, this is where they need to take a little of the blame, because they were given the opportunity to stop the Rams a few times and get the field position flipped after the offense had moved the ball a little bit. John Ryan gets a punt down there. We cover the punt fine. And then the defense would give up one big play and then shut them down. Field position flip back against us again. And we could never get out from being on the long end of field position. And that has to do with the defense a little bit. And that's one place you can put some blame on them.
Maybe a little bit. I have a hard time blaming the defense on anything when all they give up is 9 points. But you make a good point, because when you go back and watch the 49ers game against the Rams, That's how the Niners got their 2 touchdowns on the Rams to in the first half. That's how they got up early 14-0, because they got turnovers when they needed to, or they got the ball at midfield, and they only had to go 50 yards, and then they actually convert in the red zone, which is something that the Seahawks didn't do this time. Can we talk about that? Can we talk about the one red zone opportunity the Seahawks had? Because of the 8 chances inside the red zone that they had at getting into the end zone, you'd expect Jimmy Graham to be in there. You're one guy. You go back a couple years when we got Graham, and we thought, oh, great, here we got Jimmy Graham coming to the team. And when you look at guys that perform in the red zone, you had Marshawn Lynch, who was one of the top 3 performers in the red zone. You had Jimmy Graham, who was one of the top 3 performers in the red zone. Now we have both of those guys on our team. This is going to improve our performance. Yet Graham was only in there on half of those plays. 4 out of the 8 plays, Graham was in there. And I think one of those plays, at least, was a run where he was blocking. And so he wouldn't have been able to catch the ball anyway, because it was a run play.
Yeah, that was frustrating. Now, you did see one of those pass plays I think it was the final one down in the red zone there. It was the same exact play that we scored on with Paul Richardson last game. You had, was it Curse that came all the way across the formation that he attempted the pass to? But really, he had the same positioning that Paul Richardson did in the first game, only Russell underthrew it.
Yeah.
And just didn't give him a chance. And that was actually a scoring opportunity there. But yeah, you got to convert on those. I heard Mike Lombardi, former Browns GM, he's been all over the place on Bill Simmons' podcast, talk about the idea of 3rd down conversions in the red zone. And those are 4-point plays. And I had never thought about it in those terms, but that makes a lot of sense. And you miss on those 4-point plays, here you are. You're losing 9-3. Yeah, much like we lost to the Browns forever ago with Whitehurst at quarterback at 6-3.
Yeah.
I mean, that it felt a lot like that. But at least they were able to move the ball a little bit more in this game. But the red zone conversions, definitely problematic. But really, it's 3rd down as a whole, Brandon. I mean, we're only completing 20 or converting. What is it here?
There's only 4 conversions. Pete Carroll preaches stay on schedule. And when you hear Pete Carroll say stay on schedule, what he means is the Seahawks end up in situations where they're 3rd and 6 yards or less. So when I look at it and we see how many 3rd and 7+ yardages they had in the first quarter, they start out with a 3rd and 21. You're not going to convert that, very rarely. And then you have a 3rd and 10, which a defensive offsides changes it to 3rd and 5, and there they convert it to Baldwin with a 7-yard pass. You go to the second quarter, you had a 3rd and 5, which was your goal line situation, and they failed to convert. You had a 3rd and 7 that you didn't convert. Another 3rd and 5 where bailed out by a defensive pass interference, so that there's one other conversion there. And then a 3rd and 10 where they got a nice 14-yard pass to Paul Richardson, and another 3rd and 9, which was too long. So you're starting to notice a trend here. When you get into the third quarter, you have a 3rd and 2 where Christian Michael has an 11-yard run. A nice conversion on the 3rd and 2 on a short yardage situation, running the ball. Another 3rd and 10, they get shut down. And then in the fourth quarter, they did not convert on a single 3rd down in the fourth quarter, the 3rd and 8 early on in the fourth quarter, a 3rd and 10, and then a 3rd and 10, which was the fumble to end the game, which would have left him with a 4th and 2 had Christian Michael held onto the ball. So out of all that you see how important it is for the Seahawks to have 3rd and 6 or less, because that's where they're getting their conversions.
Like any other team, because 3rd and long is hard. Right. Like that's just how it is. Seahawks on the season converting 31% of their 3rd downs. That's not good enough. That's something that we've seen in the past early in seasons as well. So not exactly super surprised over it. Now, I think you can get better at staying on schedule when we haven't brought this up yet, and there's a reason why that we leave penalties closer to the end of the discussion, because I hate blaming refs for loss, but and I don't think that the blame falls on the refs, but did make it a lot harder when you get called for 3 offensive pass interference calls throughout the game, taking away some big plays. I don't know I've ever seen 3 offensive pass interference calls in one game.
I would be hard pressed to think of one. And I heard a statistic saying that of the offensive pass interference calls throughout the NFL, the teams averaged 3 for an entire season. So the Seahawks have met their average for an entire season after game 2.
That's insane. And I think you saw how ridiculous that was. And in knowing that it's not ridiculous, because you saw Pete Carroll lose his mind and actually try to kill Jermaine Curse accidentally along the way. Like, just try to knock him down. It was, look, we don't see Pete lose his cool very often. That's easily the biggest hissy fit I've ever seen Pete throw as the Seahawks head coach.
I enjoyed it because at that time, that's how I felt. And to see the coach acting how you feel personally inside, that it makes you know that they care, right? You know that those guys care as much as you care. I can see why the officials might call it. He did get his arm extended, Curse, on that particular play. And on the call on Lockett, he did kind of grab at his wrist, but that's like hand fighting that you normally see in almost every game. They could call that
every route.
Right. And if they're going to call it that ticky-tack, they have to call it all the time.
Yeah. And it was game changing. I don't understand what the refs were looking at as far as offensive pass interference. I mean, you couldn't hardly breathe on a dude without getting called. That one on Lockett was bullshit. Catfish. Like, far and away. Just terrible. And that was the worst one to me. But those sort of penalties, coupled with some pre-snap penalties, that's the stuff that gets you off schedule. And that's the stuff that really, I mean, I know the offensive passive interference isn't within your control, but the pre-snap penalties are. And that's something that can get cleaned up as the season goes on. And the other thing, I mentioned, I don't think this offense is that far away from putting it together. And I'm going to get killed for that. I know I am, by a lot of different people. But think about it in these terms. We only had 2 3-and-outs that entire game. 2. That's actually pretty good. Like, out of, let's see here, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It
was
8,
like 10
9.
drives.
So 20%, you had 3-and-outs. That's a pretty low percentage. That means you're at least picking up 1 first down along the way. You're moving the ball a little bit, trying to flip field position at the very least. And that to me is encouraging. You're not just getting shut down, drive in and drive out. And with the addition of Affetti when he comes back and the addition of Vanette when he comes back, that's going to be the difference. And we got to hope that Gary Gilliam can also pick up his play a little bit. Honestly, Bradley Sowell, he's going to be what he is for the entire year. If he can get rid of the pre-snap penalties and those sort of things, I'm in. I'm in on Sowell. It'll be fine. If we can have one guy that's a turnstile and we understand where that's coming from, Vanette can be out there to help chip and take guys on at the tackle position. I think that'll be okay. But we're going to need Gilliam to improve.
It's interesting you mentioned Sowell, because as I was watching the game, I'm like, how is this guy not getting called for false starts? Because it looked like he was jumping awfully early to get into position. And I heard Walter Jones on KGR, and he said, no, I went back and I watched it, and he was timing it up perfectly with the snap. It was the other guys that were stuck on that weren't getting off the ball as quickly. And I just thought it was kind of interesting, because to me, there were 3 or 4 times I'm like, oh my goodness, they're going to call Sowell for jumping offside for false start. But no, he just had it timed up perfectly with when the ball was snapping. While we're talking about penalties, though, I do have to say that there were a couple that we got away with. And one was when Russell Wilson went down sliding. The officials actually called that a helmet to helmet. And when you went back and you saw it was when Russell was sliding, yeah, maybe he got there a little early. Those are bang plays, though. But they called it helmet to helmet. It was a shoulder to shoulder hit. So that wasn't to me, that wasn't that dirty. Again, the Seahawks get a 15-yard penalty on that case. And then there was.
I want to disagree with you on that one. Just quickly. I understand it wasn't helmet.
But that's what they called.
But that's fine. But you can't hit the quarterback when he's sliding. You can't do it. It was the correct call.
If you start tackling as he starts sliding,
that's not how
you can't avoid it.
Russell had slid, and he took 2 full steps and then drilled him. I don't care if it's with the helmet or the shoulder pad. You're going to get called every single time for that. And I don't care if it wasn't helmet to helmet. It would be 15 yards whether they called it helmet to helmet or late hit on the quarterback.
Well,
one way or the other.
They should call it the right way then.
Well, that's semantics. I just don't care. The result was correct.
And then Richard Sherman in the end zone, he kind of got his hands on the guy that they probably could have called it. But maybe that's where all the offensive pass interference came up. Those were makeup calls for Sherman getting his hands on the guy in the end zone. But anyway, just trying to provide a little bit of balance.
Yeah.
We got an email here from Michael Paul in San Diego. Says, I'll let Adam handle the rants about the Swiss cheese offensive line and our inability to move the ball. So 2 weeks into the season, and I'm looking for positives. Here's my list. Number 1, our defense is only allowing half a touchdown per game. That's about all I can come up with. Go Hawks.
Well, I mean, the end result is leading the league in defensive scoring yet again, like we always do, because that's who we are. But there's a million awesome things you could talk about when it comes to the defense. KJ Wright and Bobby Wagner are playing out of their minds. Cam Chancellor is playing at the same level he was in 2013, and he's been all over the place. Earl Thomas picked up his game this last game. Deshawn Shead is the real deal. Jeremy Lane has been playing amazing, validating that contract. And then the emergence of Frank the Tank, man. Frank Clark is crushing it out there on defense. And that's one more guy that opposing offenses have to plan for. And he's turning into a game wrecker, man.
Frank Clark with 2 sacks in this game today. Add that to his 1 sack that he had against the Dolphins. He's got 3. And guess what his total was for last year? He only had 3 sacks of all of last season. Frank Clark already matching that after 2 weeks.
And if you want to hear more about Frank Clark and the amazing start that he's having to this season, read Clinton Bonner's 3 in and 3 out this week. I have a feeling he's going to be highlighting Frank the Tank for sure.
Yeah, so. Seahawkerspodcast.com/3i30. That'll take you right to Clinton Bonner's 3 and 3 out blogs.
Now, the one thing that I think we need to talk about when it comes to the defense is the fact that they've created no turnovers. That's part of the Pete Carroll philosophy, right? It's all about the ball and causing turnovers. 0 turnovers here against the Rams. And this is a thing that plagued us a little bit last year, the inability to turn over the other team, whether that's through picks or fumbles, whatever. But it's just not happening. And for as much emphasis as they put on that part of the game, somehow it's not happening. And I don't know what to make of that quite yet.
Don't they have an entire day of practice that's dedicated to turnovers? They have to get the ball turned over. They have to flip the field position. I mentioned that's how the Niners were able to get on top of the Rams early and finish them off. It's those kinds of plays. Those need to happen because it's when you're losing the turnover battle that makes it a lot tougher on your offense, a lot tougher on your defense.
It really does. And because then you have to play perfect ball as well.
Right.
And
they're not playing perfect.
We lost a turnover battle in this game. I mean, we had 2 turnovers. Now, the fumble by Russ at the end of the second half or the first half, that was inconsequential. It didn't make a difference one way or the other. But the Michael one, obviously, that was a game changer. It really was. But yeah, so that's the one thing I would look at with the defense and say, hey, I need to see improvement here. And let's hope that they do it.
Brian Deathridge on Facebook asks, man, where was the secondary on those big plays? I don't know if I feel robbed because of the loss or because Fisher didn't manage a trick play. And to me, that brings up the question, how does Case Keenum play that well against the Seahawks secondary and so terribly against everybody else?
I don't know that he played exceptionally well. I thought he was below league average.
He had more than 200 yards passing. That's good for Case Keenum.
Sure. I also looked at that, and when I was kind of comparing our offensive line to another offensive line, I was like, well, I'll figure I'll just watch the Rams offensive line and kind of get an idea of if there's a big difference there. Like, let's see if I'm really seeing such a putrid Seattle line, right? And part of that is we didn't get a hit on Case Keenum until 6 minutes left in the third quarter, Frank Clark's first sack. So we really didn't get a lot of pressure on him early, and that's when he kind of piled up the yards too. And he had time to throw. And if you give any quarterback, I don't care how bad they are in this league, time to throw, step up in the pocket, they'll be able to get it done. One of the reasons our offensive line struggled so much in giving Russell Wilson time, I went back and looked, and I just watched Aaron Donald. Like, is this a function of us having a bad offensive line, or did we happen to play Ndamukong Suh and then Aaron Donald in back-to-back games the two best interior defenders in the league. Because I consider J.J. Watt an edge defender. I say what you want, but he's up there as well. But Aaron Donald, I went back through. He blew up, at least by just my account, 7 plays just on his own, just being Aaron Donald. And, you know, you're going to get wrecked. I don't care how good your offensive line is. He's just going to wreck you a few times. And that's part of it, too. But I think that's why Keenum had his success, is he just had a little more time to throw throughout the first half. And then the defense obviously stepped it up in the third quarter.
Well, and Brian brought up the issue of trick plays with Jeff Fisher. He didn't manage a trick play. But when I watch the game, I think of how the Seahawks, you know, we wanted to see a quick passing game to kind of beat that defense and the Rams played it awfully well. How many batted passes did you see? And when I watch Mark Barron jump out of the stadium and then headbutt the ball on his way back down to earth, that to me, that is a trick play, because and it was incredible.
Maybe the trick play was the fact that the trick in the trick play was the fact that they didn't run a trick play. That was the trick. Because, I mean, how many times did Aikman throughout the broadcast be like, well, you know, I mean, Jeff Fisher runs trick plays. You could look for it right here, except for maybe you don't have to. Like, it's just hedging his bet one way or the other. It was kind of hilarious. But that was the trick. It was to not use a trick play.
To me, though, that's pretty tricky when you can have a guy jump 12 feet in the air and then not even get his hands on the ball, but headbutt it to the ground to prevent those quick passes.
That's a stupid human trick right there.
Yeah.
Like that was pretty amazing. Now, we did see some batted balls, and a lot of people say, oh, Russell Wilson's too short, right? No, those guys just really timed it up. Well, I don't care if you were 6'8", they were blocking that. I mean, they got up high in the air.
And that's what I mean. I think the Rams did a good job of defensive game planning, knowing that their offensive line couldn't hold up if they got the pressure early, that they would be looking to get the ball out quick. And so they were looking to get their hands up in the air. And you can coach that a lot. You can coach your defensive players to get their hands up and try and bat the ball. But there's very few teams that actually execute it well. And we saw the Rams execute it well against the Seahawks.
They really did. That whole defensive line is pretty stellar. And it's the worst possible matchup we could have. And fortunately, this next week going up against the 49ers, Brandon, very different matchup, especially up front. I feel a little better about the 49ers coming into this game.
Let's get into our preview of the Seahawks game versus the 49ers. And I want to mention, too, if you're going to the game, check out Seahawkerspodcast.com/tickets. 12% of your purchase from Ticket Network goes towards supporting the show. And Adam, we're making the push for getting to a point to where we can do 3 shows a week. And going to Seahawkerspodcast.com/tickets, getting your tickets from Ticket Network, that is going to help us get there.
That's pretty cool, because you're buying tickets anyway. I mean, just go in and do that. Go through the link Brandon just described. And they give us, it's like free money. It's a free donation to us. And you still get to go to the game and be awesome. And we get closer to that goal of being able to do 3 shows a week, which is that starts to become work. But I'd be excited to do it if we had the fundage to make it so we don't have to work as much on our regular jobs to have time to do it. So I think that'd be pretty cool. So check that out and buy your tickets there.
Seahawkerspodcast.com/tickets. And Adam, when I went back and I watched the game against the Rams, I mentioned this before, where the 49ers had the most amount of success, where they got their 28-0 win. Now that they lost to the Carolina Panthers, they were up early, but I wanted to see that game, that 49ers Rams game, because I wanted to know what to expect from a team that could shut out a team that we just lost to. And the first half, the 49ers got something that the Seahawks couldn't get against the Rams, and that's short fields twice in the first half. And they converted both of those inside the red zone. And then they did something in the second half that Seattle couldn't do either, and that was 2 80-yard scoring drives for touchdowns. And when I think when you wear a defense down, when you get up early, 14-0, I think that's what can help, later on in a game where you can get those, because you can see when a team gets a little bit frustrated, and 2 80-yard scoring drives for touchdowns, that can frustrate a defense as well. By that point, they're just ready to get home and take on the Seahawks, because really that was the game that they're going to play for anyway.
I think my biggest question mark about the 49ers is, what is their defense? Is their defense the defense that pitched a shutout week 1 or gave up 40 plus points in week 2? I honestly don't know. It's kind of crazy to think about. Now, as I look over at the 49ers defense, because that's where in this matchup I'm most interested in, right? Because it's a matchup league and we talk about that all the time. And to me, I know that the Seattle defense is going to destroy the 49ers offense. We all know that's how that's going to go. They've struggled running the ball. They struggled catching the ball. It's going to be a problem just all the way around. There's no way that they're going to manufacture points on a large scale against this Seahawks defense. It's just not going to happen. So what it boils down to is much like the run game. Can our offense actually perform? So I'm looking at this Niners defense, and one thing that sticks out to me is they don't have that monster defensive line that we faced for 2 straight weeks. I mean, you're looking at basically they run the 3-4, so your 3 down linemen, down in, down out, Quentin Dial, Purcell at the nose tackle position, and DeForest Buckner. The other end.
Yeah, and that's because Ian Williams is hurt, and Aaron Lynch, too, your other pass rushing linebacker, is out on suspension for 4 games.
Exactly. And so I look at that kind of up front there, and that is not the monster defensive lineman that we've been playing the last couple of weeks. And so I think right there, that's a huge start. You also look at those interior defensive players for the 49ers, and they're pretty terrible against the run. The only guy that plays the run with any kind of consistency is Quentin Dial. And basically, you're going to see him lined up over Glowinski most of the time. What's Glowinski's strength? Yes, it's run blocking. So we have our at least best run blocker going against their best run defender as far as up front. And if we can just move them around a little bit, which I'm fairly confident we will, looking at those players up front, we're gonna be able to run the ball. And if you can run the ball, that takes some pressure off Russell Wilson and his ankle, opens up things in the passing game, and some of those chunk plays that we did get against the Rams will be able to sustain going down the field. This Seahawks are going to score 24 points in this game, and everybody's going to go, "Wow, I didn't know that was possible." That's what's going to happen in this game. The 49ers defense isn't that great, and the problem with their offense is it's even worse than the Rams. So their defense is going to be on the field all game long, much like they did against the Carolina Panthers, wear down in the second half.
I think one place on the 49ers defense you can give a little bit of credit to is their corners. I think their corners are a little bit better than we expected on their secondary as a whole, maybe a little bit better than we expected going into the season. But you mentioned it, Adam, the run game is really where this starts off. If the Seahawks are going to get this win, the run game has to get going. Look back to last year. Remember, that's when Thomas Rawls really had a breakout game, 200 yards running against the 49ers. And really, it is the run game that's going to propel this team to a win, especially with Russell kind of being dinged up a little bit. He's still going to, but as dinged up as Russell was, he was one of the better performing quarterbacks this weekend, even on a bum ankle. I mean, he threw for almost 250 yards, right? It was when he wasn't getting passes batted down. And you saw him able to scramble a little bit. Now, he didn't have the escapability like he normally does, but still able to throw the ball effectively.
He did. And the thing is I think where the ankle is really limiting the Seahawks offense, or, limiting, is a lot of the run game has been out of three wide receivers out of the shotgun. And basically it's the read option situation, correct? Well, now if you don't have to really respect Russell Wilson as a runner, that kind of goes out of the playbook. So I think one of the things Darrell Bevell can do this week is to scrap some of the 3 wide receiver formations that we've been seeing, because they run a lot of that, and go heavy with 2 tight ends and it really just go that direction. And that way you get Jimmy Graham even more involved this coming week, now that he says he's fully healthy and ready to roll. We saw him kind of start to show that last week. And with everybody playing Baldwin as tight as they are, because that was a big part of the quick stride offense, is the quick slants to Baldwin. Well, with being a little gimpy with the knee and teams really focusing on that's got to leave Jimmy open on a lot of that stuff. And you saw it towards the end of the first half in the Rams game. I think that could be a big way the Seahawks offense could improve this week.
Yeah, you definitely saw Baldwin getting a lot more double teams looked, as opposed to Jimmy. Is that the guy you mentioned? Jimmy Graham? Because Tim Moon commented on Facebook. He said, I think maybe it's time for fans to start waiting for the second half before showing up to the game or turning on the TV. I think that might send a good message as far as getting off to a quick start, right, Adam? Because the team has not been able to get off to a good start. So he says that the fans should maybe wait till the second half to show up. But he says also they should start selling Where's Waldo posters, but replace Waldo with Jimmy Graham and call them Where is Jimmy Graham? Because when the Hawks are in the red zone, he's nowhere to be found. And although it seems challenging to be able to find a 6'8" man weighing 250 pounds wearing double eights on his chest at a distance of 20 yards, the Seahawks seem to have mastered the skill. Maybe he's hiding in the middle of the end zone, arms gesticulating madly, carefully hidden between a 6'3", 225 DB. That explains it.
I think Jimmy Graham is using Bigfoot-like skills in the end zone to disappear. I mean, because he's right, man. I mean, how hard is it to find that guy? I mean, just chuck it up. Chuck it up. You'll chuck it. Russell Wilson will chuck it up to just about anybody else, but yet seemingly is hesitant to just chuck it up high for Jimmy, that does blow my mind a little bit. Well, one other thing we should look at here, Brandon, with the Niners and this defense versus our offense matchup is they lose Ray Armstrong this week. Torn pectoral out for the year. He's among that linebacking core that actually has played fairly well for the 49ers. I mean, Navarro Bowman is Navarro Bowman.
I think he's back as far as his lateral speed, being able to get after in the run game. That could be the one guy to watch out for when you get to the second level. Maybe we can see some of the linemen get to the second level, get a helmet on Navarro Bowman and really be able to spring some runs.
You betcha. And I think them losing Ray Armstrong is a real problem for them. I mean, who are you going to put in there at middle linebacker at that point? I mean, maybe Michael Wilhoit, who hasn't played a snap all year. I guess they traded for some other dude that could split snaps there. But I think when you start talking about that and them having to reshuffle their linebacking core a little bit, that does leave things open for Jimmy. And I really feel like that's going to be a huge key to this game. I think that's a favorable matchup for us. I also need them personally to get Thomas Rawls going in that running game, not Christian Michael. It needs to be Thomas Rawls. Okay?
I can sense your frustration because and I wanted to let you know, Adam, because the Clinton Bonner coined this the wager of destiny. This Rawls v. Gurley bet, and Gurley was up by 15 yards, and then he added 58 more against the Seahawks defense. But then Rawls went backwards. And really, Gurley only had 51 yards. It was the -7 that made it add 58. So up 73 after 2 games. And when you consider that Rawls didn't even really play in that first game, Gurley should have at least had been plus 73 against the Niners defense. Yeah, to me, if I were you, I would think that after 2 weeks, the team is still in a pretty good situation. And much like the Seahawks are in a pretty good situation in the NFC, only 3 undefeated teams, with 3 of them being Minnesota, Philadelphia, and the Giants. And the Seahawks play Philly once. That has you feeling pretty good about where they are in relation to the rest of the league, because still it's 1-1.
Oh, Brandon, the season is over. This offense can't move the ball. It's terrible. This is not the same Seahawks team we've seen in the past. They'll never be able to put it together. Blah, 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 blah. I'm so sick of that narrative. That's just by dumb people. Like, that's seriously what that is. Anybody that says that is just stupid. Well, it's literally don't watch.
It's easy to be frustrated after a game, but once you have a few days to think about it and kind of lose some of that frustration, look at the bigger picture. And a lot of people frustrated with Darrell Bevell after this game, and part of that was you saw a lot of quick passes in that game against the Dolphins, and maybe you didn't see as many in the game against the Rams, but part of that too was the fact that they got their hands up. They were doing well to block those, and to me, Darrell Bevell is not the problem. After 2 weeks, you can't point to that. Well, as much as you want to point to it, by now that it's not productive to point to it, because Pete Carroll is not firing Darrell Bevell. Rex Ryan is a guy that fires an offensive coordinator after 2 weeks. And that's a guy who hasn't sniffed the playoffs and I don't know how long.
Yeah. And yesterday we had chatted a little on the phone, and I thought you brought up a really great point regarding Darrell Bevell. If you laid it out much better than I will here, I'm quite certain. But if you as an offensive coordinator started your season and they said, all right, your mobile quarterback is going to get hurt. We're going to have an offensive line that's basically Swiss cheese, a lot of moving part. Your starting running back is just starting to get worked back in. Jimmy Graham, your star tight end, you just have to start getting worked back into the offense. And you put all of that together. Then your
number one draft pick goes down for your offensive line. You got to shuffle your offensive line.
Exactly. You do all of that, and it's not going to be a struggle early on.
Yeah.
Like the fact that they're moving the ball at all should be something that you look at and say, oh, okay, that's not so bad. And you know what? I think Darrell Bevell deserves a raise after week 2. You want to know why, Brandon? Because I don't think I saw one bubble screen.
I think you're right. I think maybe he's finally listening to you.
I like it. I think that was great. So I'm very excited about that.
Well, so we haven't talked about the 49ers offense, Adam. I think it's time that we should at least mention that the 49ers have an offense with Blaine Gabbert. And really, one of the things that we look at, the way the Seahawks go after a defense, and what gives the Seahawks defense trouble is the short passing game. And when I look at the 49ers, they are all about the short passing game. Against the Rams, they only had 3 deep passes. Now, one of the fortunate things is that, 1, Blaine Gabbert's their quarterback, and 2, the 49ers receivers are really good at dropping the ball. So no matter how good you are in the short passing game, if you drop the ball or you can't get the ball to a receiver, that is going to slow you down. And that's why when I think you kind of glossed over the 49ers offense, that's why you did that, is because you recognize that. And their best receiver is Jeremy Curley right now. And that's a guy, and I kind of liked him when he was with the Jets a couple years back, but he's not a game wrecker. He's like a Cecil Shorts type guy. He's like a guy that is, just a nice receiver that you're able to throw to. He's not your star receiver. And the 49ers, quote unquote, star receiver is Torrey Smith, who can't seem to hold on to the ball this season.
That's because Torrey Smith is terrible. I talked about it when they signed him, and everybody said that was a big coup, and they got this great. He can run a fly route. That's it. That's all he can do. He can't do anything else. And even then, he has a hard time catching it. I've never been a Torrey Smith fan. Could never figure that out. You're right about Jeremy Curley. He's definitely a journeyman type receiver. Good enough to go in and be your third receiver or something like that.
Yeah, it's like a Jason Avant.
Exactly. Or Jericho Cotchery, or somebody of that sort of ilk. Now, the one thing about Gain Blabbert is that he is terrible at pushing the ball down the field. And the other thing about all of this is that when we look at the defense and offensive matchup here, is that we've seen the Seattle Seahawks defense take on a Chip Kelly offense twice. And this is when the Eagles were flying a little high, too, where everybody was wondering, oh, can this really be stopped? Is this changing the way that football is going to be played? And I don't know if you recall, Brandon, but we crushed the offense. Like there was nothing doing. I love the idea of this matchup. Pete Carroll has Chip Kelly's number when it comes to the game planning on that side of the ball, much like the Rams seem to have our number a little bit. And I don't see that changing. And so when I look at this team, I don't see where the weapon is that we really need to fear. I mean, is it Carlos Hyde? I don't know. He hasn't really gotten on track this year. And that shotgun inside zone run, we kind of have that worked out. I don't really see that being much of a problem. And look, and Gabbert has problems hitting backs coming out of the backfield too. So that's like the one route that I would fear against this team, because we always talk about tight end matchups. Well, they have Vance McDonald, and he's the second best tight end to come out of Rice in the last few years. And the first one's not even that great. So I don't think we have a lot to worry about there. So really, to me, it comes to backs catching the ball out of the backfield. That's something that shouldn't have much trouble with this staple of running backs and Gain Blabbert throwing the ball.
Well, as we wrap up our look at the 49ers, I think one thing, Adam, that is going to be really key is after we shut the run down on first down, the 49ers have been very pass heavy on second down. And to me, I think Deshawn Shead is going to be a huge key to this game, because based on the past two games and what they've done with the passing game, I think they're going to try and go at Deshawn Shead a lot with those short passes. So how he's able to defend those. And the other thing is that the 49ers don't have the big receivers. Like, you saw Shead matched up on Brian Quick against the Rams, and it was brutal. Deshawn Shead, Brian Quick, I think, had almost 100 yards, all passes on Deshawn Shead. But these guys aren't as big. Shead definitely more physically dominant than any of the 49ers receivers. He's going to be a huge guy that I'm going to be watching as far as a key matchup goes.
I think that's a great point. These receivers don't have the skill set that usually gives the Seahawks trouble. And Shead's played very well so far this year. And you don't see people testing Sherman very often. And really, for Sherman, this is an easy matchup for him. If they keep trotting Torrey Smith out to his side, he's going to get real bored real quick out there.
Exactly. And I think Jeremy Lane is what we've seen from him this year. He'll be able to handle a guy like Jeremy Curley. And so that just leaves whoever they match up on Shead.
That's going to be some Jeremy on Jeremy violence right there.
Yeah.
That's what's happening. But I think that here's my bold prediction for the game. We get a turnover in this game finally, and it's going to be Richard Sherman with the pick on a deep ball thrown to Torrey Smith.
That I don't know how bold a prediction that is, but I like where your head's at.
Because that's what happens when you try him with a mediocre receiver like Torrey Smith.
They're all mediocre, Adam.
I know. I think on that note, we should talk to our guest, who's a 49ers fan of these mediocre receivers.
This week, we welcome on Rich Madrid to preview the 49ers Seahawks matchup on Sunday. Rich is a blogger for footballzebras.com as well as ninernoise.com. Rich, welcome to the show.
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Doing great. Let's get into talking Seahawks and Niners. Now, Rich, both teams now have played the Rams. Obviously, the 49ers get the 28-0 shutout in week one. The Seahawks don't have as much luck. They lose by 6 points down in L.A. Are the 49ers 34 points better than the Seahawks?
We went through this last year as 49ers fans with the blowout of the Vikings in week one, and then things kind of just fell apart after that. I don't know if we're seeing that this early with the 49ers. I also don't know that they're 34 points better than the Seahawks. If there's a 49ers Seahawks game I feel confident about, or a little bit more confident that I have in the years past, it might be this one, only because it just, for some reason, it feels like this Seattle team isn't, last few years they've struggled early on and they've kind of bounced back, but I struggle to see where they could, improve that much that they would, somehow find their offense. So I have some confidence that the 49ers can maybe get up there and sneak a win. Leave it to the Seahawks to find their offense this week, though, and get back on track. So I don't know. Anything's possible, but I guess I kind of feel a little bit more confident than years past.
Well, one thing we've seen with the 49ers in that first game against the Rams, they had that ability to shut down Todd Gurley, and the Seahawks did the same thing. Now, then the Niners go on the road to Carolina. Carolina, a very good running team. You couldn't quite shut that down the way you did the Rams. Which is the 49ers defense that you expect to be able to stop the rushing game? Which one will they bring to Seattle?
I think this all hinges on how Russell Wilson plays, because really they weren't able to open up the offense against the Rams until they went to the spread run formations. And the 49ers had a lot of problem with that against the Panthers, stopping that. Plus, the lack of a pass rush on Cam Newton, or lack of a pass rush in general, because, we don't have Aaron Lynch right now, has really, really hampered the 49ers. I guess they just got lucky with the Rams because Case Keenum and that offensive line for the Rams just isn't that good for pass protection. But one thing that's really going to hinge on the running game for Seattle is if Wilson can extend plays or at least keep the defense moving outside the box or whatever to get their running game going. But it's definitely going to be interesting to see how the 49ers counter that. We just lost Ray Armstrong for the year, so we're struggling to fill that spot. I'm not really sure what to expect going forward with the run defense. And Yeah, for Niner Noise, I previewed Jim O'Neill's run defense before the season started, and wasn't really impressed with it when he was with the Browns, and I don't see how they can pick up that slack for him this weekend. But like I said, it's all going to depend on how Wilson and the passing game, react too. So.
Well, with regard to Wilson and the passing game, a lot of that depends on how much time Russell Wilson has to throw the ball. And we saw with the Miami Dolphins and Ndamukong Suh, they have a strong defensive line. Saw with the Rams, obviously, they have a strong defensive line with Aaron Donald and all the cast of characters for the Rams. How is the 49ers defensive line stacking up so far this year with getting a pass rush?
The pass rush has kind of been non-existent for them. Again, because they don't have Aaron Lynch due to the suspension. Buckner and Armstead, the kind of the anchors of that interior line, and the defensive ends, they really haven't been able to get quite as much of a pass rush as we'd like them to. But I think the one thing they have in their favor is Seattle's offensive line. Much like years past, it's probably the worst I've seen since Wilson's been a rookie, to be honest. So I noticed that the Rams had a pretty easy time handling that line with Robert Quinn going against your left side of your line. The Rams pass rushers are a little bit better than the 49ers, but I think they'll still be able to contain Wilson a little bit due to that injury and the lack of the talent on your guys' line.
So, Rich, I haven't had a chance to sit down and watch any of the Niners so far this year. Chip Kelly obviously comes in and employs his style of offense. I mean, is it basically the same sort of thing that we saw in Philadelphia, that quick hurry up kind of offense where you guys struggle with time of possession, or has he slowed it down a little bit, running the ball a little more? What's kind of your sense of how Chip Kelly has implemented this system?
So I've been a big fan of Chip Kelly's offense for a long time, ever since he was at Oregon, and I kind of followed the evolution of his style since coming to the NFL. 2013 was a really good year for him. They got that offense going pretty good. They had, I think, the top running game in the league that year. And since then, they've kind of stalled. His last year in Philadelphia, he lacked an interior run game. And the base of his offense is that inside zone. And he got away from it just because of the lack of guard play. Went to a more outside zone, sweep, toss style running game that really wasn't suited for, DeMarco Murray's talents. There's some concern. I don't know if you guys saw the piece a few weeks ago from Chris Brown. He used to write for Grantland. Now he writes for The Ringer about the evolution of his offense. And one of the things that we've noticed so far in the first two games with the 49ers is, he slowed down the tempo a bit. It's become more of it's still up tempo, but it's become more of a ball control. I think in the Rams game, the first half they averaged anywhere from about 20 to 22 seconds per play. And then in the second half of that game, it was around 29, 31 seconds per play, just to slow it down to keep the runtime off the clock and keep the ball in their possession. So there is that aspect of him slowing it down. So I don't think it's as much of a concern going forward with keeping the defense off the field. The caveat to that is against Carolina, they ran 80-plus plays on defense, so they were out there for quite a bit in that heat and humidity. And that was, I think, more was just due to the nature of that game. Carolina kept turning the ball over. 49ers kept turning the ball over. So there was that to factor in.
Let's stick a little with the offense. We've seen a little bit of good Gabbert and bad Gabbert so far this year, and you have some people already calling for Colin Kaepernick at this point. Is Gabbert's bad moments, is that more a reflection of how he's playing, or does that have to do a little bit with the receivers who seem to have kind of the drops?
And I was hoping to avoid the quarterback question.
Nope.
I take a lot of heat from my Twitter followers about both quarterbacks. I have a good following of Gabbert fans and Kaepernick fans. I'll preface this with I don't think either quarterback is suited for this offense. And as we've seen with Gabbert, the last week against Carolina, he struggled with accuracy a lot. And then the perception is that Chip Kelly needs a running quarterback to run his offenses, but that's not always the case. He needs that quarterback that's going to make quick decisions and be accurate with the football to keep the offense moving. And Gabbert's really struggled with that accuracy the last 2 weeks. Now, some of that is wide receiver drops, and it's the same problem that Philadelphia struggled with. I think last year they dropped, 40 plus passes from Sam Bradford who oftentimes put the ball right on the money for them. And Jordan Matthews would either drop it or, the tight end or whoever, Darren Sproles, running backs, looked like they dropped, everything. And the 49ers are starting to suffer from that. We thought Vance McDonald was going to have a breakout year. He has a chance to get the game within, or at least get the game tied, and he drops a wide open pass against the Panthers defense. I forget who he beat. I can't remember if it was a safety or if it was the linebacker that was on him. But it was right in and out of his hands. Gabbert put the ball in the money, and he just dropped it. And it was the same pass he dropped 3 years ago against this team as a rookie. And then when he does hit a receiver like Torrey Smith for the touchdown against the Panthers, he stands in the pocket, he surveys the field, and he delivers an accurate pass. So I don't know. It's a mixed bag with Gabbert. I don't think if they put Kaepernick in, I don't think it's going to be any better. In fact, I think the offense is just going to slow down and stall out and maybe even get worse. Not real confident in either quarterback right now, though.
It's funny. I think as a Seahawks fan and you being a Niners fan, we have one thing that we can have sympathy for one another about, and that's Rice tight ends dropping passes. Because I don't know if you know, Luke Wilson was Vance McDonald's backup that year that they were drafted, and I don't know, maybe they just produced stone-handed tight ends. I don't know what it is.
Well, you know what the problem is, Adam? The problem is, and I thought this is where you're going with it, is that 49ers wide receivers are just mediocre.
Oh, they are. I mean, last year we were scraping the bottom of the barrel and picking up guys, off the street who were used car salesmen to fill in halfway through the year. I mean, some of the guys we thought were going to pan out just didn't. And then, we're seeing, it's like Sunday, we're seeing guys like Rod Streeter and Jeremy Curley in the lineup. Guys I haven't seen probably in a few years and, playing, maybe just haven't been watching that closely to other teams. But if there's anybody that can turn, mediocre to average football players into decent guys, it's Chip Kelly. But at some point, you've got to have a little bit better talent than what they're fielding right now.
Well, and Rich, as I mentioned, footballzebras.com, I think with officiating, there's one big issue that I think we can all agree on as NFL fans that needs a little bit of work in the NFL. And that's figuring out what is and isn't a catch. Have you been able to figure this out yet?
Yes, I have this debate all the time with my friends, back home. And now there were a couple instances in week one where you have the Des Bryant catch. Obviously, if it's Des Bryant and it's a controversial catch, something's going to be said about it. His play in that Giants game, the ball came loose when he hit the ground and it was ruled incomplete. They were looking to see in that situation since he was near the sideline, if he was touching the sideline when that ball came loose. Since he was going to the ground, he didn't maintain control, and he hit the sideline, that ball's automatically incomplete. Same thing in that Colts game, too, or the Colts game that was, sometime later in that day. I forget the receiver, but he caught the ball, went to the ground, wasn't touched. He pinned the ball against his head or his shoulder. He rolled over completely. So through the ground, he maintained control. And then when he rolled over, he lost control of the ball. And it went out of bounds, but it was confirmed a good catch because he had already hit the ground, maintained possession. So that's those are the two things you have to look at, and they're looking at it in real time. So one, does he have 2 feet down? Does he have time to ward off contact? In other words, does he have time to ward off being hit? And does he have control? And if it happens bang, bang, if it's like a bang, bang play where it happens all at once, the ball comes loose, his feet come in contact with the ground, it's incomplete. And that's kind of what they're looking at, is that real time to see if that's what happened. So I know it gets confusing, and I've probably just made it more confusing than it really is, but you gotta kind of look at all the parts to get the whole.
Well, Rich Madrid, thanks for coming on the show. Definitely check out your stuff at footballzebras.com, ninernoise.com, and where can folks follow you on Twitter?
So I have a few Seahawks followers that follow me. They're pretty good people. They like to talk football and friendly banter back and forth sometimes. But you can catch me at RJ Madrid. That's RJMADRID. My picture is just me and my son in 49ers gear. So that's how you know it's me. That's RJ Madrid, at RJ Madrid.
Rich, thanks a lot for coming on the show. Best of luck to you guys this weekend.
On this week's 3 and 3 Out, we look back at the Rams game that wasn't and discuss the non-kneel, the non-Jimmy goal line, and the non-interference of those pesky guys in stripes. But it wasn't all bad, was it? We'll also shine a bright light on the emerging beast who has transformed our defensive line. This loss left us feeling uncomfortably numb, but we will carry on. Read this week's 3 and 3 Out, written exclusively for the Seahawkers podcast.
Thanks, Clinton, for the intro. And if you want to check out 3 in, 3 out posts, go to Seahawkerspodcast.com/3i30. You can read all of his posts there. Adam, did you know International Podcast Day is coming up September 30th? And I know you might be surprised at that it's a thing, but podcasters are pushing this International Podcast Day. And to celebrate the internationality of podcasting, the 2016 International Podcast Day Gratitude Award is going to recognize the podcast that gets the most engaged global audience measured through international podcast reviews in iTunes. So this is a chance for listeners, for all of you who listen from other countries, Canada, Australia, UK, Germany. I'm not going to run down the whole list, but I know that's where most of you are. Italy. If this is your chance to get in a review and help us, we could win the International Podcast Day Gratitude Award, Adam.
And we all know how prestigious that is. But I do like the fact that we have an opportunity for all of our overseas listeners to really make the difference. Because it's hard with the numbers to make that difference on a lot of the other things. But this is a spot where you can really do it. We need your help. Get those reviews in because we haven't gotten a lot of reviews lately. We didn't get a lot of emails this week. You know what else didn't happen very much this week, Brandon? We didn't get anybody new in the flock.
Nobody in the flock.
Happened, people.
Well, I think I know how part of it happens because we didn't mention the website getintheflock.com after we ran down our new list of people that are in the flock. And last week we had a nice long list of folks. But yes, getintheflock.com. But we did get one new donor. And that was Kathy Kunkler. She came in with a $12 monthly PayPal subscription. So if you go to the website and you see that PayPal donate button, you can actually set up a monthly donation that way. Or some people prefer to do, just a one-time donation. But yes, that's the way to do it.
Yeah, and I would be down on the one-time donation thing. Like that seems to me like that's how I would do it. But we definitely accept that, and you'll still get the bonus shows. We'll still get you on whatever level that it is that you donate, whatever that averages out to per month. If you do a one-time donation, we'll still get you in, whether that's on the Ring of Honor or just whatever level you do donate at. We'll make sure you get your same sort of benefits that you do from doing it through Patreon. But guys, I mean, maybe did the last show suck or something? I mean, I don't know. Like I'm a little depressed about this because the whole point here, right, Brandon, is it's value for value. If we're bringing value to you, we need you to bring a little value back.
Yes, and I know we want to get to that third show, and we're over halfway there, Adam. We want to hit that $1,200 mark in Patreon, but like I said, all the other ways that add up to it too through Kathy and Kathy. If you send a note, the notes for PayPal don't come in if you do a monthly PayPal subscription. I don't know why that is, but if you have a little note you want to send along too, or if you need the link to get the bonus content, let me know. I will get that to you. And yes, you can go to Seahawkerspodcast.com and we're over halfway there, Adam. We're so close to be doing this 3 times a week. It's going to be fun.
And there are thousands of people that listen to the show every week. And we're not even at 200 patrons at this point.
We broke 100. We're over 100. This is great.
Awesome. Which is awesome. I'm just saying that there's enough of you out there that listen that haven't ponied up yet. Like, let's go.
You're just putting it that way. What do you?
Let's go. I'm using guilt this week, Brandon. That's what I'm going with.
This is the value for value model, and you're not feeling valued, is what you're saying.
I felt extremely valued by all the people that are already in the flock. They're amazing, and I feel their love each and every month with their donations. Just saying, there's more love to be had, and I'm greedy with the love. I want more love.
You want more love.
I do. And the whole point is, I mean, our goal to do the 3 shows, right, is $1,200 a month.
Right.
Does that sound to anybody like we're getting rich off of this?
$1 a month. If everybody listened, that put in just $1 a month, we would be there easily.
And it's not like we're getting rich in regular life, Brandon. You work a government job and I work in sawmills. like for real. Like I'm dirty head to toe, like physical manual labor. So look, it's not like we're money bags doing this either. So you're helping out some real hard working dudes.
Well, and the other thing is it helps out with prizes too. And let's get into the Pick'em League, because we didn't go to our winners of the Pick'em League last week on the show. And
we screwed up a lot of things.
I know.
Maybe we deserve no donations.
Well, Kathy came through, so thanks to Kathy.
Yeah.
But yes,
welcome to the flock, Kathy.
Welcome to the flock, indeed. So yes, Pick'em League update. Let's look at the Seahawkers Podcast League, and you, if you want to join, it's not too late. Go to SeahawkersPodcast.com. The links to the leagues are in there. The leagues are on NFL.com. And week 1 winners: Aaron Goings 30, Bullbuster. They tied at the top, and the way I'm breaking the ties this year, I'm looking at the games that were picked incorrectly and how close those games were are gonna be the tiebreaker. And of those 2 losses, there were only 7 points between those 2 teams that lost. So very close games. Congrats to Aaron Goings, Bullbuster. Let us know. We got stickers that we can send your way. And then week 2, JK is right. I think that's a play on KJ Wright. JK is right. Was the only winner, only one with 170 points. Congratulations there.
Awesome. You know what else I'm going to do each and every week, Brandon, because I haven't ran this past you, but we're doing it. Is that I every time I go through the Pick'em League and I'm looking for myself or looking for Jared, however many points he scored, right? I see all the names. There are some awesome names this year, like really good ones. And I'm going to pick one every week. There's no like criteria. It's just one that I think is one of the superior names. And I'm going to pick it out, and you get a sticker for the week for having an awesome name. You just got to send in your information. This week, my nomination for best name of the week in the Seahawks Pick'em League, or the Seahawkers Podcast Pick'em League, is, quote, "My Rawls are Baldwin." And I like it a lot. My Rawls are Baldwin. That cracked me up. It made me giggle. And yeah, male pattern baldness apparently affects more than just one area. I thought that was hilarious. So get in your information. My Rawls are Baldwin. We'll get you a sticker. And thanks for playing.
Well, now that I know we're doing this, Adam, next week I'm going to have mine too, and I'm going to throw mine out there because I saw some good names as well. I like the good creative names. And if you register your team name at SeahawkersPodcast.com, under the links to all the Pick'em Leagues, there's a button to register your team name. And then that way we can email you when we pick it out. But that way we can email you and remind you that you did win something, because we're going to be doing random prizes too. And so it's important. Go to SeahawkersPodcast.com, register your team name, and we can get in touch with you that way.
All right. Do we have a random prize for this week? Is that something we had picked out already? Or is that to be determined yet?
Let's do that next week.
All right.
We're going to
start with the random
prizes. So this way we'll give people time to register their team name, and then we'll pull from those that are registered randomly, and that'll be our first random prize of the season next week.
Perfect. And so by registering it, we get their contact information, correct? Like, right. That's all it is.
We get your email, and we know that username belongs to you.
Right. All right, perfect. And that allows us to get a hold of you when you've won something. So I like that a lot. Perfect.
In the Patron League, week 1 winner, David Van Cleve. He tied, but there were only 14 points among the losses that he picked. So again, more close games. David Van Cleve on top. And then week 2, we had a tie from That's a Damn Offensive Line and Sergeant Pineapple.
Solid names. See, this is what I'm talking about.
Exactly.
Awesome. And David's been with us since nearly the beginning of the show.
Oh, yeah.
So it's cool to see him get on top there in the Patron League. The difference with the regular league and the Patron League is you donate on Patreon. What is it? $3 a month? Is that what we do to get involved in the Patron League?
To get in the picks, yeah.
Pool, little better prizes. And if you're playing already on the regular league or any of the NFL leagues, you can still get in the Patron League. You can still do it, and your points carry over.
That's right, and weekly winners in the Patron League. So I'm keeping track of the weekly winners, and prizes will go out to all of you that are finishing up on top week to week in the Patron League.
Awesome. All right, man. Did we have any more emails this week?
We had one review, Adam.
We had a review. All right.
Coming in from Jared Perkins in Missoula, Montana. And
I saw Jared at Albertsons the other day, but it's the first time I've seen him without his jersey on. Well, no, that's not true. I saw him on the trail once. But him and his brother look an awful lot alike.
Oh.
And so I can never decide if it's Ross or him. I don't know. So I didn't say anything.
And this one is titled Every Day They're Rustlin'. And I have a feeling that this must match his team name, too, in the Pick'em League. So because I get the song stuck in my head every time I see that team name.
It's not to. Yep.
I stumbled across this podcast on their 4th episode and have incessantly checked my podcast list each week, waiting for the new episode to be posted. Not only have these two gentlemen made me a better, more informed Seahawks fan, but as I found out a few podcasts in, we lived in the same town. As a member of the Military Seahawkers, the Montana Seahawkers, and a regular Patreon donor, I want to say thank you for bestowing your words of wisdom upon us each week. Go Hawks! And Kettle House Double Hall beer. If you aren't listening to this podcast, do better. From Jared Perkins.
Awesome. Hey, thanks a lot, Jared. Double Hall is delicious. I'm more of a Kettle House Eddie Out guy, but I see where he's come from. Double Hall used to be my beer of choice, but I've backed off the hoppy thing just a little bit. But yeah, Jared's been with us from the beginning. We appreciate all the support, man. And go Hawks, dude. See,
the Kettle House Scotch Ale used to be my go-to, but I think Cold Smoke. And now I go back and forth between the Double Hall and the Eddie Out. But yes, Kettle House, great brewery.
Yeah, great brewery.
That's an unpaid endorsement for Kettle House.
Yeah. So everybody, write more reviews, send some emails. Like, I know it's a loss and everybody's down, but come on, man, keep participating. You can call into the show. We'll play it on the air.
253-235-9041.
Say it one more time.
253-235-9041. Email at gohawks@seahawkerspodcast.com, or you can go to seahawkerspodcast.com and hit the contact button there. Lots of ways to get in touch with us. Facebook.com/seahawkerspodcast and on Twitter @seahawkerspod, or you can go after Adam. Tweet him your Pokemon Go catches at Adam the Rant.
And you know how often I check the Twitter? Not often. So, but you can still follow. It's cool. Let's see. Didn't we have a Facebook comment or two that you enjoyed this week?
I already got to him. I worked him into the show. I'm that smooth.
Oh, wow, man. You're getting good at this podcasting.
Well, after 120, what are we on? 124, 125? We're doing all right.
That's not 10,000 reps like Malcolm Gladwell.
We're almost there, though. I feel like we're getting close.
We're getting close. All right, man. So I guess that leaves us with do better and better at life for this episode. Why don't you start on do better?
I'm going to go first with do better this week because I am passionate about this one. My do better for this week is for Mrs. Craven. And if you don't know who that is, Sua Cravens, a rookie linebacker for the Washington Redskins, he reportedly wasn't talking to his mom last week. The reason why he's not talking to his mom, she's a Cowboys fan, and Washington was playing Dallas on Sunday. So my question to Mrs. Craven, how are you still a Cowboys fan? Your son plays for a professional football team. Your team affiliation dies, or at the very least is on hold when your son makes an NFL team. Your son is right not to speak to you. You are the problem. And Adam, maybe my fandom is too shallow. That I feel like I could jump on the bandwagon of any team an immediate family member plays for. But I bet you she's the same kind of fan that went looking for her son after he came out of the locker room in the tunnel saying, "How do you like me and my team now? I'll save you a spot on the couch at home for when the playoffs start because your overpriced quarterback is getting you nowhere this year." Mrs. Craven, I have you pegged. I know that's how you are, and you need to do better.
I like it, man. I haven't heard you call out a mom like ever. I don't think that
might be the first mom.
I like that your theory is that blood's thicker than fandom. Like that's funny to me. See, now I'd have gone the other way. It's like she's not even willing to give up her fandom for even her own son. Like that's loyal, man. That's loyal.
That's too loyal. That's too loyal.
Okay. All right. I see where you're coming. That's fine. Well, I liked your impassioned do better this week. I am also very passionate about my do better this week. All my do better. This is it right here. Catfish. Do Rams. Do better.
They're only good when they play us.
That's it. That's all I got. I don't even need to say anything else. Just, so mad. So mad.
Well, on to Better at Life this week. My Better at Life is for an Eagles long snapper, Adam. An Eagles long snapper that finished in third place on America's Got Talent. Now, I'll admit, I don't watch America's Got Talent, but I've been following the news on this because Eagles long snapper John Dornbos, he's a guy that every time I see him speak, every time I see him do his little magic tricks that are on the show, because he's on America's Got Talent, not for his long snapping ability, it's for his magic ability. And he's awesome at it. And
he's really awesome at it. Yeah.
If you haven't seen his tricks that he's been doing throughout the show, they're out there. They're on YouTube, and you have to watch, because if he's half the long snapper as he is a magician, I'm not an aficionado of all the long snappers, just the Seahawks ones, but he's a guy that I'd want on our team just based off the fact that I know. Well, let's play just a minute, his last minute of his America's Got Talent finale, because he inspired, I think, a lot of people with his final trick.
When life just kicks us when we're down, in those moments that life just decides to bury us. But if we stick together and we believe in one another, we will rise to the top. And ladies and gentlemen, that is how we will never lose ourselves. A minute ago, I told you guys that magic saved my life. The magic's not in these hands, it's not in these cards. It's in every one of us. It's in our breath, it's in our touch, it's in our words. It's what we think about this world and what we think about each other. And Simon, I had you write the name Eric, and I thought I'd make a little to-do list for you. Every night, may the magic forever live in your home. Grab your son and tell Eric you love him, and cross that off your list every single night. And ladies and gentlemen, may this world be magic. I love you. This has been one of the greatest opportunities of my life. I am John Dornbos. Peace out, ladies and gentlemen.
And one of the reasons why it was so inspirational, John Dornbos, his story growing up, he had an extremely rough childhood, ended up being raised by his uncle and aunt because of some of the things that happened in his life early on. And it's inspiring to see him talk about how magic has gotten him through a lot of those tough times. And so for finishing third on America's Got Talent, for inspiring so many people being a part of that show, John Dornbos, better at life than Skip Bayless.
I like it, man. He is hella good, too. I mean, I watched one of his performances on there, and I came away more than impressed, for sure. And he's a quality dude, too, is pretty cool.
One of the things you didn't see in hearing the audio clip, he talks about rising to the top. He bends a card in half and puts it in the center of the deck. You can see the bent card in the center of the deck. And then he just makes a one little quick motion, and all of a sudden that bent card is on the top of the deck when he talks about rising to the top. And so the way it was all choreographed and fit to his message throughout the series of card tricks that he was doing, it was cool to see.
That was cool. All right, man. My better at life than Skip Bayless this week is for none other than Beast Mode himself, Marshawn Lynch.
He's coming back. He's coming back. And that's why he's right at him. That's why he's better at life. Tell me this is the case.
Yeah. He's coming back because we need him. And the offensive line can't get it together. And the backs won't be able to get it together. And we'll be terrible if he doesn't come back. No, because Beast Mode is crushing retirement. And one of the ways that he is crushing retirement is he went on Man vs. Wild, or no, what is it? What do they call it now? Running Wild.
Running Wild with Bear Grylls, yep.
And now this delighted me to no end, because not only do I love Running Wild with Bear Grylls, but I love Beast Mode. And we got a little bit of a look into more of just who he is, too, going out there. And I think a lot of people do kind of have some self-reflection when they get out in the wild for a little bit. And I don't know, this might be weird to say, but just being a Montanan and being outdoors a lot, one of the things that I think about when I'm hiking and it gets hard, or where I'm just tuckering out or whatever, it's just like, I'm not going to quit. Beast Mode never quits. There's no quit. Like, you got to keep going. Like, you got to be tougher. You got to keep, you got to push through some adverse conditions sometimes. And to see him go out and be in the wild, like, you always kind of think of, like, what would that guy be like? A dude that from inner city Oakland be like out in the woods in my environment. Like, and he talked about
how he said, if I was going to start, I probably shouldn't have gone to this difficult of an environment so soon. I maybe would have been better off pitching a tent in my backyard first.
Right. And they were in some pretty rugged areas there where it was very cliffy.
Yeah, the Corsican Mountains.
The Corsican Mountains. And it was great because one thing that you saw with Beast Mode is he was up for just about anything. He might complain a little bit right at first or be like, I don't know, man, like this is messed up. But he, at the end of the day, like he mans up, he gets it done. And I thought that was fun to watch. And, just when they first come across the pig that they killed, that was pretty impressive. And the way that he had to climb down and go and get it, and he got it done. And the other thing that cracked me up through it was that he refused to sleep in the little shelter with Bear. He wanted to sleep on his own, and I understand that. And the idea too that in the middle of the night he was going to come in and steal the rest of the Skittles.
Yeah.
Like, that slayed me too.
Yeah, Bear brought along a packet of Skittles and shared them with him at one point in the show, and put the rest in his backpack. But middle of the night, Bear wakes up, turns on his camera, and there's Marshawn with his hand in his backpack trying to fish out the rest of the bag of Skittles.
Literally his hand in the cookie jar, man. And it was hilarious. When you get to see the person that he really is, the person that all the teammates have always said that he is, and he finally lets it all out for the rest of us to see. It's freaking cool, man. I love seeing it. I think the episode is hilarious. If you're a Seahawks fan, if you're a Marshawn Lynch fan, you can find it, and you will not be disappointed. So Marshawn Lynch for letting us in, doing something out of his comfort zone, and also saying how hard it was to be out in the wild and move around and all that stuff. Seeing him struggle through that makes my little outdoor struggles feel a lot better, because I'm at least on par with him in the outdoors, even though I have a ton of experience. So pretty cool stuff. Marshawn Lynch, crushing retirement, letting us inside to see who he is, better at life than Skip Bayless.
You nailed it. Great way to finish off the show. And thanks to everyone for continuing to hang in there with us, even in a loss. I think we can all come together. And we had, as I mentioned at the top of the show, taking ownership, Robert and Roseville, for the loss. I know we can't all put it on you, but thanks for coming in.
You bet. And be sure to check out the Picks and IPAs show. You can find that online.
PicksandIPAs.com. We got a website for it and everything.
You bet. Tune into that as well. And I think with that,
there's only one thing left to say.
Go Hawks.
Go Hawks. It's the end of the show. You did it. One last quick promo. If you're looking for the best place to get your Seahawks gear, visit Seahawkerspodcast.com/fan. You'll be helping to support the show, and you'll get your authentic Seahawks gear from an official partner of the NFL. Once again, that's Seahawkerspodcast.com/fan. Thanks again for helping to support the show.